Hello and welcome to Paper Plays Julie K.
Welcome everyone, and thank you so much for stopping by. Today I'm here to do week number 13 of the Margarete Miller Weekly Collage Planner Challenge. And this week looks like a fun one, or at least more fun for me than it was last week. I didn't really care for the menu one last week. I like how mine turned out because I love graphic 45 paper, but that one was a little bit of a struggle for me to find items, where this week I have a ton of stuff and it was hard to even just narrow a little bit down because I have so much stuff in my stash. And so this week's prompts for the assignment are a poem, a bird, a measurement, stitching, and it can be either real drawn or stamped, repeated rubber stamping, and then as a bonus you could use a portion of a used envelope. And so I should be able to do all of those, I believe. And so the first one is a poem. And so I grabbed a few things from my stash. One of the first things I thought about is I had this book, and it's sonnets from the Portuguese. It's from the person that wrote the poems in here is Elizabeth Barrett Browning. Some famous poems, like I'm trying to think of, like How Do I Love Thee, I think was one of hers. And so anyways, I had this because I wanted to use this hardcover as a journal at some point, so I could tear out pages from this book. And then also a long time ago I did a journal on vintage love letters, one of my favorite journals that I've ever made. And I used some bits and pieces of another book in there, and that one had some poems in it. And so I just pulled this one out because it was still in my stash when I was going through stuff. So here's a poem right here, but I also like this photo on the back that maybe I could incorporate that photo somehow. And same with this. This was that same part of that book, and I just liked the photo on it, or the picture on it. And then the backside there was part of a William Butler Yeats poem on the back of that one. Also a long time ago, a group of friends and I, we used to did altered books. And I had my friends alter a poem book, and someone had torn out one of the pages of the poems in there, and I still had it loose. So there are poems on this that I could use. And then also a while back I did a stack of envelopes or love letters, and inside of that stack of envelopes or love letters I had typed up love letters or poems to put in there. And so I still had some of those that I didn't use on here. So like there's this Lord Byron one, She Walks in Beauty. Here's one of that Elizabeth Barrett Browning, How Do I Love Thee, Let Me Count the Ways, which I love that poem. So I have that one, and then one by her husband, Robert Browning, too. So I still had those printed off on parchment paper that I could maybe incorporate one of those into there. So that's what I kind of picked out at a quick run through my stash for poems. The next is birds, and birds is really easy for me to come up with items for. My husband and I actually do birding in the summer for work. We do some breeding bird surveys and songbird surveys and stuff. And so we do have a lot of bird books, and I happen to have a bird book here that was falling apart, and I've used a few of the sheets in here, but I have more in there that's falling apart. I also have another book page that came out of another book, so I could cut some of those birds out as an option. I do have a ton of rubber stamps of birds. I don't have any of them sitting next to me right now, but I can go grab one pretty easy. Also birds, when I was going through just my ephemera stash, this came from some scrapbooking paper, but there's this cute little bird there that maybe I could incorporate that in somehow. I have some little cards these are Tracy Fox digitals. I could use one of those birds. I also had this hummingbird cut out from something, and I never used it, so and that came from a magazine, so I could use that. I have these digitals that came from Christy Art Design, and Christy is with a K, that I like her stuff, and so I could use one of those. I also had some other Tracy Fox ones printed off that I haven't cut out, and the coloring's a little off on these just because my printer needed to be recalibrated, And so I haven't really used them for anything, but it would work for this. They're close enough. They're just not quite up to par. And then these other 2 sheets were ones I had printed off at the same time, and I think these ones are from Antique Papery. Again, the coloring is slightly off on them, but they'd be fine for this type of project. So those are my birds. A measurement. A while back I had used that scrapbooking paper with kind of a measuring tape on it, and I still had pieces of that left, so I just dug this one out. So I'll for sure have to use that one in the layout, because that's the only thing I grabbed out for a measurement. Stitching, I did pull out, I had some little pieces of paper that I had stitched and ruffled up, and there's stitching down the middle, so I grabbed one of those out to use. Stitching, repeated rubber stamping. Right now I just have this one sitting on my desk, but I have lots of rubber stamps, so I can easily go grab something else. But I grabbed this one because this one's just kind of a nice background sentiment one. It's written in French, and I use this one every now and again, so I pulled that one out. And then a portion of a used envelope. I had just grabbed 3 different envelopes here to use. So I'm kind of leaning towards this one. I like this one with the pink. Possibly if I'm thinking about a poem, you know, a love poem or something, the pink maybe will work for that one. So I'll probably use that one for the envelope. So I'm going to go ahead and maybe cut out a couple things and try and narrow it down a little bit. And then I'll come back and do a layout with you guys. Okay, I am back, and I did cut 1 or 2 things out, and I narrowed some things down, and I changed my mind on a couple things. I did decide to use this one on the parchment paper by Lord Byron, She Walks in Beauty. I like that poem. And then I had that other page that had the poem on the back, but it had this really fun lady on the front, and I just thought maybe she could be the person that Lord Byron was talking about. So I cut her out because I kind of liked her. So I was thinking, for sure, I kind of want to maybe put that up here, and then I would put her down in the corner just based on her looking out or away from something. And then I decided to go with this little bird from the scrapbooking paper. It was like a punch out from a kit or something. And I decided to go with that one just because I didn't have to fussy cut it out. It was already cut out. So that was the only reason why I grabbed that one. I did stamp this one, and my original thought when I had picked out that stamp was that this one I was going to randomly stamp all over, because this one right here had said repeated rubber stamping, but then I realized it might look kind of funny on the type of layout that I was hoping for. I'm still going to use it, but I'm just not going to randomly stamp this one, so that I had to go and pick out another stamp that I could randomly stamp all over. And so I just picked out this kind of background one from Stampin' Up. It's from an old set from 1997. It's just a whole bunch of little random dots. So I figured I could stamp that randomly on here after I was done gluing everything down. And so I did change my mind about that. And then when I was when I went into my rubber stamp drawer that had background stuff in it, I did come across this other Stampin' Up rubber stamp, and this one's from 2008. I take my sets apart, so I don't know what set it was from, but I've used this stamp right here for like faux stitching. And so instead of maybe using this piece of stitching, I thought maybe I'll just stamp this somewhere on a corner or somewhere to use this as my stitching repeat for the stitching reel drawn or stamped. So I did change my mind about that. And so now I'm going to try and lay things out with you guys, glue it down, and then I'll do the stamping. And then for the stamping, I think I'll have to put something like a piece of chipboard or something underneath my book page to make it, or my collage page to make it stamp better. But I'll worry about that when I get to it. So if I start off with these two, because they're kind of my bigger pieces, and I still like this, and thinking I could still maybe put it down here, or I could just leave this background too that's showing here. I'll just come back to, because this one right here isn't required. This stamping right here isn't required for right here. So if I do this other random stuff. So a poem, I got a bird. So I have this bird. A measurement. Let's put the measurement down. I could do something like that. Or I don't know if I want to cover up the whole poem. So maybe I'll do something maybe across the bottom with that. Or I'll just set it there for now. A measurement, stitching, I'll come back to that one. Repeated rubber stamping, I'll come back to that one. So then it's just the envelope and the bird that I need to try to get down before I go back and reevaluate. So if I had this piece right here, I kind of, since it's part of the top part of the envelope, I think the only really good spot's going to be up here for that maybe. And so I am going to have to cover up this, or this covers, because that would still work for a portion of an envelope, of a used envelope. Just trying to see if I can save part of that envelope if I do decide to put it underneath, if I could cut it. Because I do like this part that says the London Zoo, but I mean, no matter what, my poem's going to be covered when I add her to it. So maybe that would still work, because then I could still randomly stamp this. And so then I would need to add the bird. You know, maybe the bird would look kind of cute sitting on her hat, maybe somewhere. Well, that might look kind of cute, the bird sitting on her hat. And so, again, I could then randomly stamp this, you know, on this part and even up there. Probably before I glue the bird down, I could stamp this up there. And then I still have this. This is just an extra. I don't have to include this, but since I stamped it, let me see if it fits. I could put that down here. I would just need to cut off a little bit on one of the sides, I think, to make it fit. If I do this as my layout. So yeah, I would just need to cut a little bit of that off. And I could still put this down here underneath her. So then I would have this piece right here. So let's see. So the stitching, if I did that. So I wonder then if I just ink the stitching part of this one and I try and maybe stamp it right between these two pieces of paper to make it look like, you know, faux stitching, I guess, right there. So I could do that. And I would probably want to do that before I glued her down, because I don't want the stitching on top of her. And then I still have this one. Like I said, I would just randomly stamp that up here, and I could stamp it down here too on a couple spots. So I think that's going to work. So I'm going to glue down these things, I think, right here first. So I'm going to do that, and then I'll come back and continue to work on the rest of the layout with you guys after I get these pieces glued down. Okay, I did go ahead and glue those couple pieces down, and before I glue the lady back on, I want to try to do the stamping. And so since I had this little poem book still sitting here, I just put the cover underneath here so I have a nice hard spot to try and stamp on. And I just want the bottom part of this rubber stamp, so I'm just going to try to carefully ink just that part. You can also, if you have like a Marvy or a Tombow type marker, you can also just color the back side of your rubber stamp too, to just get the part that you want inked. So I'm going to try that and see if I can very carefully stamp it where I want. And if it doesn't quite work out, that's okay too. And this again is for the faux, the stitching, the rubber stamping stitching, or the real drawn or stamped stitching. So that kind of works there, I think. And I'm trying to decide, maybe I'll do a little down here too while I'm at it. Just do one more. So then I got some little stitching there too, I guess. I think that'll work for that part of it. And then now, again, before I put her down, I want to do some repeated rubber stamping, which I did that twice, so I guess that was repeated, but I'm going to go ahead and use this. And then the ink that I'm using is Victorian Velvet, I think, just kind of a little bit lighter color. And I'm just going to go ahead and just kind of randomly stamp over my whole little layout here. This is kind of a nice little background stamp. I use this one. It's been a while since I've used it, but this is what I use it for, is if I kind of feel like I wanted to add some sort of layer to a project without adding bulk. That sometimes you can do that just by adding some stamped images like this. So I think that covers the repeated stamping. So then the last couple things that I need to do is to go ahead and glue this and the bird down, and then I'll be done with this layout. So that is my final layout for week number 13. Again, I chose a poem by Lord Byron. I have a bird measurement with this little tape measure, stitching, and I did the faux stitching right here and right there by stamping that. Repeated rubber stamping in the background. You can see all the little dots that I stamped. And then a portion of a used envelope as my bonus, and that went up there. So I think I really like how this layout turned out this week. I think it's kind of cute. So thank you everybody so much for watching, and hopefully I will see you back next week for week number 14. Have a wonderful day and happy crafting.